Welcome to the Dynasty Evaluation Show. You've been here before. Thanks for joining again. We got some awesome guests today to talk about the top 4 rookies coming into 2025 NFL rookie drafts that you are going to have sooner than you know it. They're going to be here. So let's talk about them. Let's see who likes who. We got some awesome guests today. Let's get the show on the road.
McGlynn is in. I repeat, McGlynn is in. Let the fun begin. This is the Commissioner Evaluation Podcast with your host, John McGlynn.
Was that Herms?
He got them guests on the Rolodex, stopping by to talk about some Dynasty Superflex. Everybody, yo, commish is in. It's time to sit down to listen to John McGlynn. Yo, who we trading, who we fading, who we getting off the squad. Knowledge never overrated, playing for number one. And yo, McGlynn is in. It's time to let the fun begin. It's the Commissioner Evaluation Podcast with John McGlynn.
Thank you, everyone, for joining in here. We got some people to introduce, some repeat customers, and some new people. Koop, you're the only one that's not been here before, so we'll start with you, okay? Koop Troopa, Dynasty Koopa. Tell me about yourself, where people could find you, what's going on in the Dynasty world you live in, and we all love.
Yeah, I'm Koop Troopa. I hang out with Eric and Matty over at South Harmon. I've got a podcast, Grinding the Edge, on our South Harmon podcast feed, where I focus on the data behind fantasy football. I'm not focusing on the players. I'm focusing on the data of fantasy football managers. How do managers build their teams? How do players impact from a fantasy point of view? And how can we use that to better identify those guys who maybe at the NFL level are not as impactful, but for fantasy, they really are?
You know, I go out with your boss every time my daughter goes to school in Iowa. So every time I'm in Iowa, I talk to Iowa Mike. I say, hey, what are you doing? Why don't you meet me at the bar? So we sneak beers in at my daughter's lacrosse game or after while she's going shopping with my wife. Me and Iowa Mike get to drink some beers together. So it ends up being pretty nice.
Mike is great, and you've got all sorts of great people at South Harmon, and I didn't say it in there as well. If you ever go to southharmonff.com, check out the Warp Tool. That is something that I've created based on what I learned about how players impact fantasy. There's some other awesome people out there use the idea of, if you're familiar with statistics in baseball and WAR, like wins above replacement, same idea, but just applied to the fantasy space.
I'm familiar with baseball being a pain in the ass, so I don't play it anymore. It's fun. Fantasy football is about 23 leagues of fantasy football is about as much as I'm good for it. Other than that, the wife would absolutely kill me if I was a fantasy baseball. I'm in fantasy hockey with JT too, but it's good stuff. Matty, you've been on here before. Tell me about yourself too.
Yeah, man. I mean, right now, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing over at South Harmon's kind of on the back burner, other than 4D Chess Dynasty Podcast comes out on Wednesdays. But I want to take a quick second. Koop talked about Warp Tool. I know there's been some more versions of that type of analytical approach towards Dynasty. But if you go to South Harmon FF, get the Warp Tool. We got a Warp. We got multi-year Warp. Nobody has that. That is where you could get an absolute leg up from your competition, from your league mates. I know we all call them friends sometimes, but we know in our leagues, we want to squash those guys. And if you go to South Harmon FF, that's where you can get that leg up. So that's kind of what I want to plug right now.
T-Rock says South Harmon in the house. Some South Harmon fans here today. What's up, dudes? Jeremy Payrog. Jeremy also says, Matty, you the man.
Jamie!
What's good? Warp King is too modest. And then what's good, everyone? What's good is Eric Vanek being with us, too. Another repeating customer here on the Dynasty Evaluation Show. So tell me about yourself. What's going on with you?
Yeah, John, JT, thanks for having me back again. Appreciate it. Just working here with the South Harmon guys. I do the America's Game podcast on the South Harmon feed. That drops every Thursday. During the season, I was doing the Waiver Wire show as well, so hopefully you guys tune in for that. But yeah, kind of just taking a little break here from fantasy before we start getting into draft season here, which is pretty much starting this week with Senior Bowl and all that stuff. So going to start getting ready for the NFL draft and these players that are coming into fantasy for this year.
I'll tell you who does not take a break, and that's JT Orange, my man up here. He does nothing but He's in C2C. He's in IDP. He's in all the three-letter words that do fantasy football, fantasy hockey, fantasy baseball, fantasy wrestling, fantasy cat fights. I don't know what else he does. It's absolutely amazing. JT, the co-host with the Mohos, my man. Besides all the awesome stuff, tell everybody the awesome stuff you do on Fantasy and Frames and elsewhere.
Yeah, just quick rundown. During the season, do IDP plays and fades for Fantasy and Frames. Also shoot the gap with our guy Jorge. We do that one. That's an IDP show Wednesday nights on Fantasy and Frames. Here with you on the Dynasty of Val when we can get these shows in. And then me, I also host the Stew with JT Brew. That's my show. Do gambling on there. So college football gambling show every Tuesday night, and then do NFL when I can squeeze it in. Some weeks I get it in, some weeks I don't on those, but I will always put picks online if I don't get an actual show in. And then our new Around the Ice podcast here on Fantasy and Frames. It's a hockey podcast Tuesday night. I'll be there later tonight. I got a bunch of shows going, but tonight about 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central, we'll have the hockey podcast going on that one. And then, hey, DLF, I rank IDP. I'm just ranking Devi this year for the first time for them as well. And I've got all kinds of rookie spotlights coming out. I've already got 3 or 4 on the way. I've got one coming out this week on Travis Hunter. So I am knee deep in everything NFL draft wise already on this one. So pumped for this show and talk about some of these top guys.
I'm happy to be here with Fantasy and Frames and have all you guys on these shows tonight on the FIF YouTube channel. Absolutely fantastic. JT is a master of all trades. Absolutely. JT's tongue is going to be like a cat's by the end of these shows because we got 2 tonight and he's got his own around the ice show after this, the hockey show going on after that. So he's Eric's
about 5 hours straight of podcasting tonight. I'm working out. I'm getting ready to go.
Getting ready. I don't know how you can prepare for that, but good for you. That's Eric's deep dive waiver wire pod helped me so much and so much of the 40 bench spot leagues I'm in. I love deeper leagues. Me and JT talk about that all the time. The deeper, the better. That's what she said. But yeah, and I mentioned fantasy cat fights. That's not a real thing. But if there are fantasy cat fights, I can't join that either. I'm in too many leagues. So
I don't know if I'd be in a league, but I probably would bet on it. Let's just be honest. I throw a couple dollars down.
So tonight, what we're doing here is we got we don't want to make the show 17 hours long, so we just said top 4, okay? And then we said top 4 quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. We all got an idea of like who we like at the beginning. Everybody's kind of getting familiar with the rookies right now. A lot of people are just kind of like, oh my God, let me put my phone away. Fantasy football's over with. Give me a break. But we got to introduce you guys. Some easy listening. This is like WKRP in Cincinnati. Some easy listening here for you to enjoy. So let's start out now with our quarterbacks, top 4 quarterbacks. So Matty, you are the first here. You're the prodigal son here, the sacrificial lamb. You are Matty. Give me your top 4 quarterbacks going into the 2025 rookie draft and what order you had them in.
So I completely cheated. I used today's Senior Bowl to kind of sway a little bit of my rankings. But as of right now, I have Ward, Sanders, Dart, and Howard in my top 4. Cam Ward, Shadir Sanders, they're in the top 2. They're the ones getting the buzz around that round 1 draft capital. Jackson Dart was kind of in my number 2 conversation because I think he's got a lot of upside. His game looks a lot like Bo Nix when he was coming out of Oregon. He's got the size, 6'2", and he's a bit mobile. We saw that at Ole Miss, but we got reports out of the Senior Bowl that he's not comfortable taking the ball under center. He's never really done that in his career. I think that's going to keep him out of the first round, whereas I'm going to obviously rank the first 2 quarterbacks, the guys go in the first round. And then Will Howard's a new addition to my top 4. I've had Milroe in that rankings, but I've made the switch. Milroe comes into Mobile, small hands, under 9-inch hands, very raw, quarterback, not a good passer, good arm strength, very good athlete. I wouldn't say he's I thought he would be a little beefier, 220. I thought he was more closer to 230, but 220 is fine. He's going to be able to run the football. I just don't want to deal too much with a project if I am. I want to go with a guy like Will Howard, who has the experience, got a national title under his belt now, and we really saw him come alive in that playoff run. I think he can be one of those guys, 6'4", 235. He starts wowing throughout the process. This is that guy that could get, that edge over that second and third tier quarterbacks in the class.
This is every day when new information comes out. This is a fluid All these rankings, all these estimates, all everything, it's fluid on a daily basis. If you think you're gonna stamp your top 5 or top 4 or top whatever, and this is gonna be it until the NFL draft starts, every day the size of somebody's hands, the speed, you watch them catch it, you watch them running routes to the Senior Bowl, you watch them in any of these events, anything. Even sometimes you find background information about what somebody's doing, they got off the field issues. This is going to be fluid process all the way until the NFL draft, and after the NFL draft, it might change because of draft capital. So I love that you guys are coming in here now, chiming in with new information, changing up your ranks a little bit. This is absolutely perfect. So, JT, a little bit different to the top 4. Tell me your 4 guys.
Yeah, John, I totally agree with you. I've already slightly adjusted every one of my ranks for all these positions in the top 10 3 times. That it already. So I'm constantly moving guys slightly one spot up, one spot down, depending on learning new things, looking at them, watching some more film. So you're definitely 100% on that. So for me at QB, I'm a little bit different than some people on this. I'm a Shadur Sanders guy. I have been for 2 years now. He was my QB1 in this class 2 years ago. I thought he would come out and be the number 1 quarterback. Does he go number 1 in the draft? I'm not sure, but for me, he's my QB1. I know he gets a lot of hate for various reasons, but I also hear the hate, and then I'm like, has anyone actually watched him play games? Because what they say about him is not what I see on film. Is not what I've seen watching him the last multiple seasons at Colorado and at Jackson. So I'm on Shadur Sanders. He's my number 1 guy. Cam Ward is number 2 for me. He entered this college football season as QB3 behind Carson Beck. It was Ward, Beck, Ward, Sanders, Ward, Beck, were my top 3. Ward jumped up. Beck obviously going back to school, so that moves him off the list, but Ward would have jumped him anyway at this point. Number 3 for me is Jackson Dart for a lot of the reasons that Matty said. I know there's going to be a transition period with him, with that Ole Miss offense. It always is for people, but I think he's got the skill level. He's got an arm. He can throw on the run. He can actually move. It's going to be, I would not expect him to play right away and be good right away, but I think if somebody takes a shot on him in the 2nd or even early 3rd round, I really like him. So he's my number 3. This one's I've been getting a lot of hate about, but Kyle McCord from Syracuse is my QB4. I absolutely love McCord. Every Ohio State fan I talk to absolutely hates me, says McCord's the worst quarterback they've ever seen. I'm like, he lost 1 game for you guys and you hate him because he lost 1 game. It's garbage. Kyle McCord, he was very solid at Ohio State. He wasn't great, following up some absolute outstanding QBs there. A lot of pressure on him. He went to Syracuse. He lit it up this year. Lit it up. He was great. Now, maybe people say, the competition one is good. Well, it wasn't quite as good, but he still led the nation in passing. He was fantastic. Everybody wants to bring up the 5-6 interception game against Pitt. That was just an insane game. The amount of the stuff that happened in that game is like a once-in-a-lifetime game. So when people are like, he turns the ball over time, he doesn't. Outside of that game, he had 6 interceptions this year with over 4,000 yards passing through it. That's a myth to me. I like Kyle McCord a lot. If I'm going to take a quarterback that gets drafted in the 3rd round or even early 4th, if McCord goes there, he's a guy that I'm taking in fantasy because I think he's going to have a shot down the road. Think of Kirk Cousins, a guy that maybe goes 3rd, 4th round, doesn't come in and start right away, but maybe by year 3, he gets a shot and proves himself. I like Kyle McCord. I think he can improve. I definitely think he would be a quality NFL backup with starter upside. So those are my top 4 guys. Milroe, like Mike talked about, he was originally in my top 4. He's out for me right now. I don't trust him. I think the NFL, somebody's going to take a shot. I think he's going to go before Dart and McCord, but personally, I would take both those guys over Milroe. I just think he is such a big project. You're swinging for the fences with him for me. So that's my top 4 with Milroe being there just outside that top 4.
I hear that. We got haven't seen any 2024 film on McCord, but boy, I was not impressed with his 2023 film when I was watching Marvin Harrison Jr. tape. LOL. All right, well, That's
Yeah,
that's why we watch
like you
games.
said, he wasn't fantastic at Ohio State by any means, but he was nowhere near as bad as everyone claimed he was. He threw for over 3,000 yards. He had 26 touchdowns and like 6 interceptions, and people act like they act like he was an Iowa quarterback. That's how people act like he played. He did not play that bad. He wasn't great, but it was also his first year as a starting quarterback. You know, coming in junior, he leaps and bounds better at Syracuse this year. I mean, leaps and bounds better at Syracuse. He improved greatly. I thought he matured a lot, at least from what I saw. It seemed like he was ready to lead the team at Syracuse, where he kind of was like the guy in the background at Ohio State. So if all you've seen is Ohio State tape, do yourself a favor, go back, watch McCord at Syracuse. To me, he was a completely different player at Syracuse than he was at Ohio State.
Yeah, Brandon Hallam. Maybe I'm crazy. Take Will Howard with a low round pick and save a few million in cap. I mean, it's not a bad idea. I'm sure people have already considered that, but that's I'm cool with that. Koopa, what's your top 4?
Yeah, so my top 4: Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Milroe, and Jackson Dart in that order. So you have a clear tier 1 and 2 of Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. So it's a matter of, okay, which one do you like better? For me personally, that's Cam Ward, because I think that he is the quarterback that has the potential to be the better NFL quarterback. I like how his arm looks in terms of the throws that he's able to make compared to Shedeur Sanders. I also think that he's got that quicker release. Like it to me, everything in terms of if everything hits right, Cam Ward is going to be my number 1. And when I'm playing fantasy, when I'm looking at, okay, how do I want to actually draft these guys? I'm shooting for ceiling. There's not a whole lot of difference between if I get the quarterback 12 versus if I get the quarterback 20 in terms of on a given season. But I'm shooting for the guy that I think has a better chance of having that quarterback 6 season, and I think that is going to come out of Cam Ward. And the same thing goes for out of that top tier for you're going into the next tier of quarterbacks, which is that Jackson Dart, the Jalen Milroe, Will Howard, Kyle McCord, all those guys in there. We don't really know exactly who's going to shuffle out as the best of that next tier. And if I'm going to gamble on anybody, I'm going to gamble on the guy that runs the football a lot. And so that is Jalen Milroe. Because for fantasy purposes, if we have a rushing quarterback, we're going to get more points, even if he's not good. Like if I'm just having somebody on my team who, hey, they're a backup quarterback, they're going to come in, fill in for a couple spot starts. Jalen Milroe is actually somebody that I might trust to pop in there for a couple spot starts, a la like Malik Willis that we did this past year, where he came in and he rushed the football enough for Green Bay, where he got you some good fantasy performances. That's what I'm looking for out of that next year, because I don't think we have anyone that is going to come in and be those regular starters. And so then Jackson Dart for me was just the next best out of the rest that I thought was going to look good. Matty has him as the number 3 for a reason. Some of it being off of the Senior Bowl stuff, but I also think just tape-wise, he's the one that looks the best. He's the one that I think NFL teams will try and gravitate towards filling in on their rosters.
Got some comments here from Fizzle Dollars. Shedeur Sanders, locker room leader, whole life has been a success. I'm betting on that continuing. A lot of haters out there for Shedeur Sanders, so I get it. I mean, you see how he's got that presence in the locker room. I love seeing that kind of stuff. So, and then he's got Milroe to Pittsburgh behind Fields for a year. I want Fields to stay in Pittsburgh. I just traded for him in like 7 leagues. I want Fields to stay in Pittsburgh and be a team leader, be the guy. Hopefully, he turn that switch and he'll be able to make that transition. So, I'm hoping that doesn't come true, because I want Fields to just stay in Pittsburgh for a long time. Milroe, go ahead there. You're not, they already got a running quarterback. That's transition for them after a year. I see that. It makes sense, but I see it. South Harmon Dynasty, woohoo! That's usually a Chris Joel Smith comment, but I'll take it from someone else. That's not a problem.
I was gonna say, was that Chris Joel Smith? John, I was actually just in the chat to Fizzle. I know Shedeur's taking a ton of heat, but I think if anybody is prepared to be an NFL quarterback, it's him. He's been in the spotlight. He's taken heat nonstop. He's done for, people see little clips and are like, oh, he's a jerk. I think the guy is Shedeur. I think he is more prepared than anyone to jump in the spotlight.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Eric.
All right. So with my 4, I have it Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, and then Jalen Milroe. So I was watching some Cam Ward right before we hopped on here, and that kid just has everything. Good arm, accuracy, ball placement, all that good stuff. He's a little bit bigger than Sanders, I think, too. Like his legs are a little bit thicker, so I like that. Just everything I've watched so far on Cam Ward just screams that he should be a franchise quarterback. So I really like Cam Ward as my 1. Shedeur is next. I think there's still a couple warts here and there for Sanders, but he does have some good stuff with him too. I was talking with Dynasty Barry, who was in the chat earlier, a little bit ago. Like Sanders, like his mobility is not as good as Cam Ward's. I think it's more like a CJ Stroud. Like he can do it, but will he do it? That's more of a thing with Sanders for me. So kind of like Cam Ward a little bit more just because of his rushing ability in fantasy football. Jackson Dart, kind of the same thing that Matty was talking about too. He has some good rushing ability as well. I like his ball placement. Yes, he's going to have to learn a little bit more, try to be under center and all that stuff. But I think Jackson Dart has all the tools to be a NFL starting caliber quarterback. I'm hoping he goes in round 1, early round 2. If he goes later than that, then I probably put a little bit of a pause on that. And then 4th, I had Jalen Milroe, kind of like what Koopa was talking about in fantasy. Look at the top 4 quarterbacks in fantasy right now. You got Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson. What do they all do really well? They run the ball. So Jalen Milroe, same kind of thing. If he ever hits, he could be a top 5 fantasy quarterback weekly with the way that he can run the ball. So I will take the upside shot on Jalen Milroe there. Obviously, there's a lot to go on with the Senior Bowl this week and see how he looks. Like I'm totally open to flipping this 4th quarterback of whoever it is. If Jalen Milroe shows that, he can't even be a competent, NFL starting quarterback with throwing and all that, then I'm more than willing to move him down. But I think with his rushing ability alone, that's going to put him up in my top 4 for right now.
Milroe kind of scares me because of the statistics kind of fell a little bit when he took over as starter. So I get it. He's a running quarterback and it's all about fantasy points, but this is a tough spot. So let's jump to the running back spot. JT, you lead the charge, the locomotive that is the 2025 fantasy football running backs coming to the NFL, because this is, for a while their running backs were dead in fantasy football, and all of a sudden this is like Return of the Jedi kind of stuff, and all these awesome running backs coming in the league. So to pick the top 4, you could pick a top 6, top 10 right now because there's a lot of good running backs here, but we got to start somewhere. We got the top 4. Who do you got?
As a former slow, small running back, I am pumped that running backs are back, baby. I love it. I love that running backs matter again. I've been yelling it for years. I'm like, if they still matter. Finally, people believe me. I love this class. I think this class is easily 15 to 20 deep. I think this is going to be a crazy good class. It's going to be interesting to see where these guys go. Number 1, I think for me, and I have not seen a single person that he isn't number 1, and that's Ashton Chinty for Boise State. I've watched him a lot. I tell you what, he's not the exact same body type, but man, I went back and watched some LaDainian Tomlinson film from TCU. He reminds me of LaDainian Tomlinson at TCU. He really does, man. Seeing all those fronts, everybody knew he was going to get the ball, and he still crushed. I love him. I think he's got to be number 1 off the board. Question, I think, is the NFL draft is how high he goes, because I think he's going to be number 1 off the board no matter what. I also think he's one of those guys landing spot isn't going to matter for him. So I love GT. He's number 1. Omarion Hampton, North Carolina is number 2 for me. Terrible offense North Carolina was this year. They were bad. And yet he still played pretty well. Now he obviously had a better year the year before when Drake May was there. Shocker, because Drake May's really good. But he proved something to me this year, that even though his stats dipped and he wasn't quite as good, he was carrying the offense for this team this year. And everybody knew that he was going to. I really like him. Great size, solid speed for how big he is. I just think he's one of those guys. I don't know if he's ever going to be a guy that leads the league in rushing, but he just seems like a guy that can be a perennial top 10 RB in fantasy. He just, he's going to do just enough for you all the time. I really like Hampton. Number 3, I've jumped around on this 3 through 10 group like nonstop. Number 3 for me, I think, is going to be Travion Henderson from Ohio State. I just like what he brings. I just feel like his game matches the NFL right now. I think he's going to run enough. He's going to catch enough. I know a lot of people like to kind of compare him to like Jahmyr Gibbs and stuff. I don't know if he's Jahmyr Gibbs, but he's when he was a freshman, people thinking he was going to be way better and ahead of him when he came out. So he had a little injuries in college, held him back. But I just think in the right offense, I think Travion Henderson will absolutely crush. So I like him. He doesn't need 20 carries a game. If you can get him 10 or 11, and then he can also catch 5 or 6 passes out of the backfield, I think he can do a lot of work without touching the ball that much. So I love him. And there's Ohio State teammate, former Ole Miss guy, Quinshon Judkins. Judkins, I like a lot. He's a banger. I feel like he's that mix. He's just not quite much as a banger as Hampton, but I think he's a little bit better wide receiver. I like Judkins a ton. I think, again, laning spot for these guys is going to be really important, I think, for a lot of these players. Judkins in the right system, I think, could be very, very good. I like him a lot. These last 2, I don't know if Hampton and JT are going to change for me. Henderson and Judkins could, especially once we see draft capital, because, man, there's so many guys I like in this class. So it's going to be real interesting.
And, yes, 100% agree with that one. Here it is, our woo, Chris Joel Smith, our regular woo. There you go. Thank you very much. Let's see. No doubt, Dynasty Barry 83. No doubt, teams should be set up for it, too, based on how the last classes have gone for this running back class. Absolutely. So, all right, so this is going to be – I'm looking forward to this right now because this running back it's going to change so much with all the speeds and the sizes and we've already seen film on all these guys, but the draft capital, this is going to change so much. But there's so many good running backs. So Koopa, who do you got next? You're number 2 on this murderer's row list.
Yeah, I've also got Gene T as number 1, and I think I think I don't need to go in more into him. We all know he's going to do well. It's just a matter of how high is he going to be drafted. Amarian Hampton, he's also my number 2. I think that he's once again, he was solid at North Carolina. He was somebody who was a focal point of that team. And I think he's going to go to the NFL, and he's going to be a focal point of a team there as well. He's probably going to be one of the 1A guys in a 1A, 1B backfield that the NFL likes to do, where they've got 2 guys in that backfield. I just think Hampton is somebody that he's just built to be on the NFL field. My number 3 is Travion Henderson. So much like JT, I'm trying to choose who out of this entire tier of running backs that you have so many guys, who do you want at the top of the list? And kind of like how I went with Jalen Milroe at the quarterback position, I want the running back that's going to catch a bunch of passes. Because we play in PPR leagues. You get 1 point simply for catching the pass. It doesn't matter how many yards you get. And so Travion Henderson is that running back who has gone out there. He's caught a bunch of passes. He's the guy that I think is going to be able to take that level in terms of fantasy that will have that similar amount of draft capital compared to the other top running backs. Of course, that can all change depending on how testing goes, depending on how this whole lead up to the draft. Like if we start seeing, hey, Travion Henderson's falling, he's looking like he's going to be a 4th or 5th round guy. Okay, I'll probably switch that into being a guy who's projected to go on day 2. But this is what you're going to be doing from now all the way until the end of April, is figuring out, okay, where are these guys projected to go? Who are NFL teams liking? Who are they not? And how does that fit in to what you would want out of a fantasy running back? And then my last guy is Caleb Johnson. I think that he is a solid early down runner. Personally, I like him a lot in terms of just seeing what he's done on film. Obviously, Mike is a big Iowa guy over here at South Harmon. Caleb Johnson being the Iowa running back, I've seen a ton of stuff on him, and maybe I got a little bit that bias in this decision here. But I think that he's the kind of guy that can fit in. He can get a ton of early down work, and I think that he's somebody that's just going to be able to step onto an NFL field and just be that bruiser running back that can soften up that defense. And if he lands in the right spot, you have a team where towards the end of the game, they're wearing down that opposing defense, he can start breaking some big runs.
You had mentioned scoring for some of the fantasy football leagues, and I just wanted to – JT's in a league with me where it's a half-point PPR for wide receivers, a full point for running backs, and 1.75 for tight ends. Check your scoring because, I mean, as much as PPR is the going thing right now, there's a lot of leagues that are still non-PPR. We have a guy that Kyle August that's in a couple of leagues of ours. He thinks like PPR is a devil scoring. He's like, I'm never going to put that in my leagues. PPR is terrible. I want my leagues to reflect what happens on an NFL field. I want someone to be rewarded for catching passes out of the backfield or being a receiver downfield out of the backfield on wheel routes and whatever, other routes, anything coming out of the backfield. So 100%, I agree with that. But check your scoring before you, go nuts for some of the receiving backs. But, guys that are generally aren't speaking are involved in the offense that much. I'm going to be head over heels for a running back who catches the ball in the backfield for sure. So where are we at now? Eric, right? Eric. So This may be a little bit different than the first couple people we heard. What do you got going on here?
Yeah, so I want to agree with JT on this. This running back class is awesome. It is literally 15 to 20 running backs deep of guys that I really like. So if you are in a league with point per carry, especially, like this is the draft for you. Like the running backs coming out, there's just so many of them. I mean, we can literally make a list of 15 to 20 and we probably still could go more than that. So my first guy, same as everybody, Ashton Genty. Don't have to really talk about him, but he's going to be a very, very good talent, first-round pick. My second guy is Caleb Johnson from Iowa. I just really like his home run ability, his vision. He can catch the ball a little bit too. I mean, he was pretty much the only offense at Iowa. Like every Iowa offense known to man is like just the running back is the only guy, maybe the tight end. Everyone was knowing he was getting the ball, and this dude put up 100-yard games every single week just about. I think he even had, like 80 yards against Ohio State or, something like that too. So Caleb Johnson's really good. I really like him. I really like Hampton too. Another big running back. Like there is a bunch of tanks in this running back class from the 210 to 230 pound range. There is like 10 to 12 of those guys in this class that are just tanks. So I love that. These bigger running backs. And then my third guy, I have Quinshon Judkins. I could put in Travion Henderson there too. I just think Quinshon has a lot of power. I think he's going to be a feature NFL running back that could start, carry the load every single week for you. So I favor him just a little bit over Travion, but literally like this top 3 or 4 or 5 is going to change, leading up to the draft. So, but right now, those are my top 4 guys.
I love it because when I look at this class right now, I don't want to go too far out the radar here, but Ashton Genty, 215, Hampton, 220, Caleb Johnson, 225, Quinshon Judkins, 219, Devin Neal, 250, Nicholas Singleton, 227. I'm not sure, like 233 for Mullings. Like, there's a lot of guys that are going to be in this class or next year's class, especially this year's class. There are some big dudes, man. And I love big, fat running backs that run down the middle, especially guys that can catch the ball, too. I mean, I'm a big, fat dude. I love offensive linemen. I played offensive lineman. There's nothing better than having I grew up in the I formation days with big, fat fullbacks and big, fat running backs and big, fat linemen. And I'm all about the big, fat, right. Going out for beers.
How could you not love watching Cam Scatabo play in the playoffs?
Yes.
I mean, that was just fantastic. Loved
my wife, my kids, my daughters, everybody was watching that game at Arizona State. It was absolutely wonderful to watch that game. I wish they would have won because I think nobody wanted Texas to win, but that game was absolutely awesome. Scatabo he had to be like almost carried off the field. He did so much in that game. So super, super cool. Yes, I love the fat guy. So Matty, this is you. Bring out finish off the running back position here with some awesome players. We all got the number 1, but go ahead with the rest of your career crew.
First, I'd just like to apologize to the viewing audience. I am over here hacking up a lung. There's just something nasty in the air right now, boys, and everyone's getting sick. And I'm just getting over whatever this is. So if you see me I am just clearing out the old voice box trying to get ready. But I want to say one thing about this running back class. You could field a legit Royal Rumble match with the amount of quality running backs. And like you mentioned, they're big boys too. So they could toss some boys over the ropes. I am not lying. When I look at my ranks, excuse me, 20, 25 guys I think are capable of carrying the ball at a quality level in the NFL. Will this many running backs find homes? They can't. But, excuse me, it's unbelievable how many good players are at this position in this class. My top 4 is similar to everybody's so far. Jinty, mega producer, back-to-back years, Heisman Trophy finalist. Reminds me a lot of Maurice Jones-Drew when he was at UCLA. Omarion Hampton at 2. Strong runner, good after contact. Was his third highest fantasy points per game at the college level last year. 11 touchdowns in a bad offense. Reminds me a lot of DeMarco Murray. My number 3 is Quinshawn Junkins. Got hurt on the productive front this year because of the splitting carries with Travion, but we kind of knew that going in when they decided to kind of form that double-headed dragon for OSU, but he's got the size. I do want to see I hope he works out the combine because I do worry about his long speed, kind of that burst, but 15 touchdowns, he's a tank. I think at the next level, he's going to find himself to be a quality ball carrier at the NFL level. And then I have Travion Henderson at 4. Just like Koop said, he had 25 catches, but his ceiling for what he can handle at the next level is quite high. And despite the lack of kind of surface stats, I look at one metric that kind of pops, and that's yards after carry per attempt. He had the second highest in the NCAA last year, or in this class. So if he can handle the ball on all 3 downs, an NFL team is going to be more than happy to feed him the rock at the next level. I do want to talk briefly about one running back that I could see creep back into my top 4. There's many guys. I'll just be honest. But one guy I do want to mention is Ollie Gordon III. Crazy productive last year in 23. Fell off a bit this year because the Oklahoma State Cowboys were an absolute train wreck, but still had double-digit touchdowns, still had 30 receptions, and he comes down to Mobile at 6'1", 233, and by a lot of accounts down there, he carries it well. He has a lot of the qualities that I want in a running back. It's just get in line, pal. There's many running backs in this class that have good qualities.
6'2", 230 for Ollie Gordon, too. That's a big boy.
Big boy.
That's some biggins. Yes. So, well, there's our running backs. They said that this is going to change more than anything. This is like we just put all these names in a blender, and it might be the top 2, might be pretty close, but it is going to be a changing atmosphere. It'll be like the weather in Chicago. Every day it's going to be something different. After the top 2 or 3, it is going to be a constant review. So let's go to wide receiver. This is not so deep this year. I think a lot of good players, but not crazy deep. But there's some pretty good players on top. So Koopa, you're going to start us off at the wide receiver position here with your top 4.
Yeah, I'm going to say it right now. I do not have Travis Hunter in my top 4. The reason being that Travis Hunter, you have to project what is he going to do at the NFL level. And he's saying he wants to play wide receiver and cornerback. And I think that that's great. I think he can be a successful wide receiver and quarterback at the NFL level. The problem is when you look at what that's going to translate to for fantasy. Even if he's probably going to need to be a cornerback on the field primarily. And then wide receiver are going to be the downs that he's going to take a snap off. And so if we're looking at that, he's probably not going to be the 90% on the field kind of player. And instead he's going to be probably the 70% on the field kind of player. And with that, you don't have many top wide receivers come out of having only 70% snap share. You need your guy to be on the field for 90+% of snaps. And so that is the reason I have him completely out of the top 4 until we see a landing spot that where the coach tells us he is going to be on the field 90% or more. Then I am going to put Travis Hunter outside of my top 4, top 5. Like he's gonna be the kind of guy that I draft like towards the end of the second round in my Dynasty rookie draft. That was a great question there by Jamie too. If Hunter was playing just wide receiver, I think I don't know that I would put him at my number 1, but he would definitely be up there in that conversation. I'd probably have him as my number 2 behind Ted McMillan.
What if he plays primary wide receiver and just chumps in on like nickel and dime packages and in a kind of relief kind of? What do you think then?
Then I'm on board. For me, it is entirely of what is that snap share going to look like at the NFL level, and I do not currently believe that he's going to have that 90+% wide receiver snap share that you need out of your fantasy wide receivers.
Very good, very good. Who's next?
So, well, now I can go into actually who my top 4 are. I needed to get that out of Travis Hunter. But my number 1, Tet McMillan. I think that's pretty universal that Travis Hunter. Outside of Travis Hunter, Tet McMillan is the highest wide receiver out of literally everyone. He's just somebody that is an every down wide receiver. He gets tons of separation through doing really good route running, through change of direction. He does not rely on his athleticism to get himself receptions at college, which is the thing that you see the most does not translate to the NFL. You see his technique is the thing that shines, and so that is the thing that you love to see at a wide receiver, and that's why he is by far and away the number 1 wide receiver coming into this draft. My number 2 is Luther Burden. He's another one of those guys who has a ton of versatility. He's super explosive, and he's also really twitchy. He's almost like it's going to be an interesting thing to see, because I almost see him as an answer of like, what if you had a little bit better version of like a Kadarius Toney? And we all know how Kadarius Toney turned out at the NFL level, but when he was coming in, he was somebody that was really hyped up. We were excited to see this guy on the NFL field, and I feel like Luther Burden has a similar thing for me, that I just am really excited to see him at the NFL level, and if he's better than Kadarius Toney, hopefully he can be that guy that produces. My number 3 is Emeka Egbuka. He's somebody, if you were playing in your C2C leagues 2 years ago, he was the number 1 wide receiver on the college side if you're trying to rebuild your NFL squad for the future. And he had that really, really bad 2023, and then he turned it back around this year. And he's one of the wide receivers where I think his NFL potential is he's much closer to that currently. I don't think he has a ton of room to grow at the NFL level in terms of getting better in terms of route trees, route running, all that kind of stuff. But I think that he is still going to be a solid wide receiver at the NFL level. I just don't think he's going to be that guy that necessarily completely explodes and becomes like your top 5, but like a wide receiver 1 consistently for you week after week. He's probably that guy that comes in, he's filling that wide receiver 2 or 3, or maybe even a flex spot. And then my last guy is Isaiah Bond. Isaiah Bond, I've been a fan of his for a long while, and he's the kind of wide receiver that you move all around the formation. You've got your spread offenses that are infiltrating the NFL. I think he's somebody that he gets into one of those. He's going to be somebody that a coordinator is going to love using to put him in motion, move him into all sorts of different positions on the field in order to get the ball in his hands and be able to get him all sorts of like design plays and things like that, short yardage, all those sorts of things, and just let him use his skill to get past the defense.
I'm probably the only guy that's going to have Luther Burden here as my number 1 receiver because I just love him. He reminds me of like just a tough guy, man. He's the kind of guy you see downfield blocking all the time, making the play, being part of the offense. He doesn't play. It drives me nuts when these wide receivers just play spectator, like when somebody else has a ball in their hand, it's not them. Burden's just kind of the all-around player for me, and I like him a little bit more than Ted, and so he's my number 1. But I'll let you guys go on with your list before I interrupt you anymore. Eric?
Yeah, so I have Travis Hunter number 1, and that obviously comes with the caveat, is he even going to be a wide receiver? So yeah, I'm assuming right now he is a wide receiver until I hear otherwise. We'll see what happens there. But if he was or if he goes, high in the draft like he's going to, and he's going to be a wide receiver, I would have him as my number 1 wide receiver in this class. After that, I have Teddaroa McMillan as well. I've always really liked his size. He's like 6'5". Kind of reminds me a little bit of like Drake London, a little bit of Mike Evans in him. I think there's definitely room to improve there as well. that excites me a lot because I already think he's really good. The guy had a 300-yard receiving game this past season. So really like him. Luther Burden III, like you said, he's a hard worker, does all that dirty stuff. He's a complete player, kind of does everything. He's kind of been compared to Deebo Samuel a little bit. I could see a little bit of that as well. I don't think he's going to run the ball like Deebo did, but you could use him on some jet sweeps and all that kind of stuff as well. And then last I have is Emeka Egbuka as well. I really like Egbuka, especially this year. He came back to this team. A lot of people thought he was going to come out last year, and he didn't. He came back, and the production just wasn't there like it was in previous seasons just because the Ohio State offense didn't run or pass the ball as much. Jeremiah Smith came in, who's an all-world freak athlete. So he took a little bit of a back step, but I still really like Egbuka. He is smooth, runs really, really good routes like all Ohio State receivers usually do. I think he's closer to like Chris Olave than, some of the other, players in this draft. So I think he could have that kind of ceiling, maybe not quite to Chris Olave, but it wouldn't shock me if Egbuka came in and was a number one wide receiver or turned out to be that way. I just think he's that good of a route runner, good player and everything. And if I had to have a fourth, if Travis Hunter is not there, I would put Matthew Golden from Texas there as my number 4 receiver. I've really liked his game all season long, playing with Texas there with Quinn Ewers, and especially his playoffs, he was really good too. So that would be my 4th guy if Travis Hunter isn't a receiver.
Thanks. I appreciate the extra man there in the rotation. Much appreciated. Matty, when you're done coughing, you could jump on these on your top 4 too. I'm coughing myself. You guys see me in the background. Something is definitely going around. So
it's just the air is just nasty right now. But I got the same top 5 as Eric. I got the same exact top 5. I just decided to put Hunter at 5 for every reason that Koop mentioned. So I'm just gonna leave him there. Wait to see how it kind of pans out. But man, Travis Hunter's got a lot of. I hate to put this on this type of level, but he's got that Justin Jefferson fluidity, that strong. He reminds me too much of Justin Jefferson. I'm just gonna say it. I don't care. I'm gonna say it here with Dynasty Evaluation. I'm gonna say it. But my number 1, Ted McMillan. You can win a number of ways at the receiver position. He's not the fastest, but man, can he go up and get it? He really knows how to utilize the size. And I think at the combine, given what I've seen on film, I think he has a chance to really impress the crowd and how fluid he'll run the drills. I think he has a chance to run a really good gauntlet, which obviously matters a lot when it comes to wide receivers. So I like Ted McMillan at number 1. Luther Burden was my number 1 coming into the season. But what happened? 676 yards. I mean, Missouri was just a disappointment all around. And Burden really just kind of showing, like, is he going to be that slot plus player? I thought he could be a little like that Malik Neighbors dog on the outside. I don't know if he is after this past season. So that's enough. I'm not going to dump him off my ranking. He's a good player. He's just at 2. Emeka Egbuka, EV. Sing the good Lord's praises. I have been saying this for over a year. I couldn't agree more. I've called Chris Olave Pikachu, Emeka Egbuka's Raichu. He's just the bigger version. He's just the next evolution of Chris Olave, the way he plays. And then number 4, Matthew Golden. Isaiah Bond, super talented wide receiver, couldn't stay on the field, obviously, as much as he would have liked last season. Just kind of missed some games in terms of, not the games, but it was just off the field more often than I was expecting. Matthew Golden stepped up. Wasn't really that overly impressive athlete, not really the biggest guy out there, but super reliable. Quinn Ewers' number 1 target, was clutch whenever they needed a big play. Golden was there. And when I started looking back at some of the college film, look at the size, look at the way they win on the field, Matthew Golden reminds me a lot of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, will he achieve the level that Amon-Ra did, being a 3rd or 4th round pick, kind of taking some time to brew and then just hitting the scene hard? We'll see. But according to a lot of the draft guys, Daniel Jeremiah and whatnot, Matthew Golden is flying up draft boards. I think it's just that toughness, that ability to win on the field. So I got him as my number 4 receiver.
He's been there's been rumors of him running a 4.35 40, which I didn't, I mean, that would be amazing if he did, so that would be absolutely, he would fly up boards. That would be absolutely fantastic. So he's definitely, there's so many, like JT says all the time, there's so many sleepers in this draft. I mean, I don't even want to use the word sleepers anymore, but there's so many like underrated or undervalued players that are on the way up in this draft. So I'll let JT talk about his 4, but I mean, JT could talk about probably the top, like you guys too, same thing, top 20 guys, but he's going to be mad at you because you said bad about Missouri. So be ready for this one. Okay.
I'm not going to try to go on a whole rant about Luther Burden here, but I will give you my 2 cents because I did watch every Colorado game and every Missouri game the last 2 seasons. So I feel like I know a lot about Travis Hunter and Luther Burden both. If Hunter plays wide receiver, I think he's got to be number 1. I think he's the number 1 athlete in this draft. He is just, if people haven't watched him, he is just exceptional. I mean, the guy is an absolute freak. I think Matty's right. I think he has Justin Jefferson upside. He really does. If he gets, the problem is, I don't think a team's going to get him in camp and go, we'll play him a little bit of wideout. I don't freaking think it happens. There's no way. He is too freaking talented. Hunter's my number 1. He is, unless something comes out and a team drafts him and it's like, no, we're pretty much going to use him as a cornerback and like give him packages on offense. That would be the only reason he would drop for me. I just think he's an absolute freak, man. Number 1 player in the nation. The guy just seems like absolutely got his head screwed on. Like I think this guy has elite talent, and I want talent. If I'm like in the air, like, oh, I want the guy that's the most talented. I think he's the most talented guy. So I'm in on Hunter there. I will say a little pat on the back for me. I did put in a bet for him to win wide receiver of the year in college this year, and he won. So I think he's a really great wide receiver. So that tells you that much. Number 2 for me is Luther Burden. Number 1 wide receiver in the country coming out of high school. Absolutely was awesome at Missouri. Really fell off last year. I think teams are going to talk to him. They're going to realize he played hurt a lot of the season, and he had a couple games he was sick. Also, Brady Cook, while I love Brady Cook, guy fought through, played like a champ all year. He was not good. He was also hurt all year. So their offense took a monster dive. But if you look at what Luther Burden did as a junior, or excuse me, as a sophomore, true sophomore, as an 18, 19-year-old, 86 catches, 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns. And again, people want to say, he's, a guy that they're just going to have to dump off. He has to manufacture yards. He's not. That if you go back and you watch his sophomore film, he was burning guys deep. He was running everything in the route tree. That did not happen last year. If you watch the film from this last 2024 season, you're going to see a ton of short dump off passes because Brady Cook could not get the ball down the field. His arm was all jacked. He was struggling. And the coaches knew it, so they weren't even calling those plays. So I think you're going to see Burden. A healthy Burden is going to impress the shit out of all these NFL GMs. They're going to want him, and I don't care if he goes 8. I don't care if he goes 22. I don't care if he goes 31. He's going the first round. He's going to be up there for me. I just think unless he just ends up in a horrible offensive situation, I just think he is an elite talent as well. So I'm on Luther Burden. I said I wouldn't go on forever, but I went along longer. I was going to love Luther Burden. I think I'm loving that people are sleeping on him because of a bad year last year. I am praying he drops me in every draft. I have a bunch of like 1.7s, 1.8s. I'm like, just let him drop to me. I hope everybody's over him, and I hope he gets to me in every freaking league because I'm going to take him.
I have 3 picks in the top 6 in our draft, right?
Problem is, I want all these guys. So Ted McMillan was the guy that he was probably coming into the year my number 1. He just above Burden. I saw everything that happened. I still love Ted. I think Ted's really good. I think this is a really close with these top 3. I think it's really close because I don't think any of them are the same type of receiver. So I think depending on where they go and how things line up would maybe change things for me. I love Ted McMillan. The Arizona, same thing that happened in Missouri. Arizona was freaking terrible this year. They were terrible this year. He still had some awesome games. Easiest bet of the year was Ted McMillan over 1,000 yards receiving. Easiest bet of the freaking year. Started off the year with 300 yards in game 1. I should have put $1 million on it. I was like, Ted McMillan, even though they were terrible, he still cleared that easy, and the team was bad. Ted McMillan's a stud. So many people don't realize it because they just didn't watch West Coast football, and damn it, you had to search to find an Arizona game because they were so bad. But Tet McMillan is the real deal. I love Tet at 3. If he fell to me and I missed on the top 2 guys, I would not be upset about it at all. Emeka Egbuka, number 4 for me. I'm hoping he gets to the Steelers. If he gets to the Steelers, I want Steelers to draft him so bad. I think he's super underrated. I think he's one of those guys that is going to go back and we're going to look and go, oh, he was pretty good in college. I didn't think he would be this guy in the pros. Well, I think he's going to have a much better pro career than he had college career. I really do. I think he was one of those guys, unselfish, was just a team player, never complaining about not getting the football. I love Egbuka. I think he's going to excel at the next level. Those are my top 4. If I'm going to throw in a 5th guy just because if Hunter wasn't in there, if Hunter was, say, a cornerback, Trey Harris out of Ole Miss would be my next guy. I love Trey Harris. If he doesn't get hurt this season, if he doesn't have the growing injuries, he was on pace for an absolute monster season at Ole Miss. I don't think people realize, like, when Ole Miss started kind of falling off and having a little problems, it was when he got hurt. He was putting up 150, 180, 200-yard games every week before he got hurt. He still went over 1,000 yards. I think he only played 6 games total on the year. I mean, he was an absolute freak this year. If he gets healthy and can stay healthy, I think some team's going to absolutely get a steal on him in the second round, and they're going to be so pumped about it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about him because I love Trey Harris. Love him.
Do you think Trey Harris has just a couple too many plays manufactured for him?
It's going to be a question because that Ole Miss offense, they set it up, they do the plays. I mean, they really can get these guys open. I mean, you saw it when he got hurt. A couple other guys had some monster games too. So, I mean, Lane Kiffin is a really good offensive coach. He's a really good offensive coach. But I do think Trey Harris, I've been watching him. Again, I'm in C2C and Devy leagues out the ass. I picked up Trey Harris at Louisiana Tech because I was like, this guy's going to transfer and be in a beast for somebody. And when he transferred to Ole Miss, I was pumped. So I was like, if he wouldn't have got hurt, I would have probably won 2 more C2C leagues this year because it crushed me when he got hurt in leagues. He's going to take some time to learn some more routes and do some more things, but I think he's got the ability. He might be one of those guys we look back and go, he gets taken in the second round and has a so-so rookie year, but then you see him second, third year just take off because I think he has that ability.
My homie, my neighbor, my drinking partner, Nick Scripp, tons of studs here, and also McGlynn's in here too. So you guys are all studs, and I'm here with you. Thank you very much for chiming in. Thanks, Nick. I'll see you later.
McGlynn and the studs.
Save a cold one. Save a cold one for McGlynn.
Yeah,
don't drink them all.
That's my boy. All right. So we get to tight end, the most popular probably position this year because this is apparently the biggest tight end class ever to hit the history of college football. So, Eric, we're going to start with you here. Start off with this list of awesome tight ends that are entering the 2025 NFL rookie draft.
Yeah, definitely one of our better tight end classes that we've had in quite a while. So I'm excited to get some new faces, some new youth there at the tight end spot. And leading it off, Penn State tight end Tyler Warren. This guy was just an absolute beast this year. Like, Penn State literally had like no wide receivers that did anything. Tyler Warren is a do-it-all, blocking, receiving, everything you can think of. Tyler Warren was the man this year for Penn State. Against USC, he had a 17-catch, 224-yard touchdown game. So that just shows you, this guy can carry the load there at the tight end spot. So I really like Tyler Warren. Number 2, I have Colston Loveland. I mean, he's pretty much been the top receiving option at Michigan for 2 straight years. He had a lot of injuries this year he dealt with. Like, he didn't play against Ohio State in a couple other games. So, but Colston Loveland's a really good all-around tight end as well, catching the ball, decent blocker. But I'm more excited about him in the receiving game. This guy I won't talk about as much. I know this is Maddie's guy, but Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green. This guy he also had a 17-catch, 213-yard game in his bowl game this year, a bowl game record. Like, this guy is just a catching machine. I think he's going to be a weapon at the NFL level. Somebody, you think of Bowling Green, you don't think of stud players in the NFL, but this guy could literally go in round 2 or round 3 this year, and it wouldn't shock me, and he could be a feature piece of an offense. And then third is Jason Taylor's kid, Mason Taylor, the tight end from LSU. We saw it today in some highlights at the Senior Bowl, like super athletic, making one-hand catches out there. Really, really good route runner. I think Mason Taylor, he should be, perfect for an NFL offense to be a receiving option. So here's 4 really good tight end options, and I probably could give you a couple more if I wanted to. But yeah, really good tight end class. I'm looking forward to them. You're on mute, John.
You're muted, John.
Sorry about that. My neighbor's a big Penn State fan, and he says, let me tell you what this is here, okay? Your boy, Tyler Warren, that's all he really is Brock Bowers with awesomeness injected into him. That's his description of Tyler Warren. So that's,
That's Brock.
Yeah.
He's Black Bowers with awesomeness. That's saying something.
I was like, okay, I'll take that, and then me and JT were on a show yesterday with Pope's, Jeremy Popolars, and we talked about how Harold Fannin might be like Mike Gesicki, just like, a guy that just runs routes, can't block, doesn't do too much. I'm kind of concerned about that. And then we were so worried about his weight. He weighed in at 247 or 248, JT? What did he say it was? He weighed in at the
he ended up
238.
It's 238. The 247 on what I was talking about, Rondo Gatson, is who actually I was shocked that was 247. But yeah, Fannin was 238. And I was gonna say more, but I'm gonna stop until I get.
Yeah, I was like, now it makes me a little bit happier that he came in weighing a little bit more than I thought. I saw him like 227 or something like that before. I'm like, he's gaining some weight, but yeah, we'll get to it in a minute as far as that goes. But I had to tell you about that Tyler Warren conversation because I was laughing just like you were, JT. That was the best description I ever heard in my life. But Matty, you're up. You talked about Harold Fannin first.
Harold Fannin, my number 1 tight end on the board, 1,500 receiving yards, 10 touchdowns. He scored 26 fantasy points per game at the collegiate level. The second highest was 18 fantasy points. I know it's at Bowling Green, but here's the thing, boys. He had 2 games where Bowling Green took on big-time competition. At Texas A&M, at Penn State. Against Texas A&M, 8 catches, 145 yards, and a tutty. At Penn State, 11 catches, 137 yards, and a tutty. Unbelievable in terms of his fluidity on the field. His yards after catch, almost 900 yards after catch, which is first in this class. Highest yards per out run. And now the 238 puts him in that Evan Ingram-esque range. You could kind of begin to see it now. Where I want to pump the brakes a little on that, I guess, is it took Evan Ingram some time to brew, had flashes early, went dormant, and now has become a reliable tight end over his last few years in Jacksonville. So he's my number 1 tight end. My number 2 tight end, Colston Loveland. This was Colston Loveland's class. He was the tight end 1 coming into the season, unbridled, top tight end prospect, still only 20 years old. Like EV mentioned, injuries kind of plagued this season, but a lot of the underlying metrics still popped, including yards per out run, 3rd highest in the class. And DJ Daniel Jeremiah, one of the most renowned draft guys, he has him as the 7th highest player on his board. So let's not forget about Loveland and the prospect that he is. Tyler Warren, he is my number 3 tight end. He's great in all the reasons you've mentioned. All of his numbers check the boxes. Size checks the boxes. The big red flag for me is 5th-year breakout. We continuously crucify wide receivers for 5th-year breakouts, and now a tight end does it, and we're going to call him Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers went to one of the biggest college programs and had the offense built around him when he couldn't even vote in this country. These two aren't even on the same planet in terms of prospect, in my humble opinion. But he is a massive human being, and if he gets a draft capital, he could go up my rankings. I'm not a hater, but there are red flags. That's why he's my number 3. But the top 3 for me are on the same tier. They're on the same tier. Number 4 for me, it's Oronde Gadsden Jr., second, however he wants to go by. Just like you mentioned, JT. Coming in at 247 was surprising. Had 934 receiving yards, added 7 touchdowns, was a good target, a reliable target for Kyle McCord in that pretty strong offense for Syracuse. He scored a lot of fantasy points at the collegiate level, 16 fantasy points per game. And he's kind of that stylistic, that new age tight end that we're kind of seeing be adapted pretty smoothly at the NFL level. But I think that for me right now, I'm really hoping he suits up tomorrow night or Thursday night in the Shrine Bowl. I'd love to see him out there and kind of see what he could do. Long arms, good catch radius. But man, after that top 3, I could rattle off another 5 that could end up leapfrogging each other. This class is pretty fun.
Matty getting spicy for $50. Getting spicy here, Matty. That's all right. We like spicy here. We like spicy. I'm not afraid of hot food, hot stuff. Would you, just question for you, Matty, would you put Warren, Loveland, and Fannin all in the top 12 overall tight end rankings for Dynasty?
I'd have to look at it. Off the top of my head, I think 2 of the 3 might be in the top 12. All 3 of them would be my top 15. I could say that.
Okay, there you go. Thanks for the question there. And then, okay, JT, you got the tight ends here. Tell us about this awesome tight end class.
Yeah, I love it. There's some guys that were ranked really high a couple years ago that dealt with injuries that I think are going to be steals late in this draft. I'm just going to say that right now. There's going to be – I tell you what, as a Colts season ticket holder, I really want him to take Tyler Warren at 14, but I've done a lot of mock drafts where I haven't got him at 14. Somebody took him in front of me, and then I really loved who I got in the 3rd and 4th round at tight end. So I'm like, I kind of want him to take him, but I kind of want him not to because there's a lot of other guys I think would be awesome on that team. Tyler Warren's number 1 for me. The 5th-year breakout, like Matty says, is a little concerning. The issue is, though, people got to realize he was a quarterback. Guy came in as a quarterback, transitioned to tight end, put in a lot of weight. So, he is a little behind the curve. What he did this year, pretty amazing, especially as we all know on what tends to be a pretty poor offense in Penn State the last however many years outside of running backs. So the fact that he did it on Penn State is even more impressive to me. I'm giving them a little bit of the pass on the 5th year just because of the transition. Also, it is Penn State. They've had a ton of really good tight ends in front of him every year he's been there. So it's like it's not like he was like, oh, well, he couldn't even get on the field. Well, he couldn't get on the field because everybody in front of him is in the NFL. So it's like I'm going to give him a little bit of play. I do. He's no Brock Bowers. I love him, but Brock Bowers is the freaking man. I loved it. Said it last year when he came in. I would take him everywhere. I didn't even care if it was tight end premium or not. I was like, he is absolutely badass, and he absolutely proved it right this year. He was awesome. So Tyler Warren, great. He's my number 1. Number 2 for me, Colson Loveland out of Michigan. Again, another guy, not a very productive offense, somehow still put up numbers, put up stats. I think he, again, is going to be another guy that we're going to look back and be like, oh, yeah, he's going to have a way better pro career than he ever had in college. I like him a ton. I've got Fannin 3. Here's the thing for Fannin. I think Fannin has the highest upside in this class, but he's got to get drafted by the right team. He's got to get drafted by a team that absolutely says, oh, this guy can be our 1A or 1B on our team receiving wise. And then they set him up and play him that way. If he gets on a team where some coach keeps putting him in line and having him block down on a defensive end on a counter, he's screwed. It's going to be bad, but because that's not who he is. If he gets a team that does that, they're going to screw him up. It's going to be a waste. But if he gets a team that's like legit sees his potential receiving, I think he has the highest upside to be just an absolute fantasy stud. I think he absolutely can. But to me, he could move up to that higher for me if he ends up in the right situation, because I think he could be awesome. But man, I think Warren and Loveland are going to be pretty good no matter what. I think Fannin has to be on a team that wants to feature him to really use him to his ability. So that's my little context on Fannin. This is a guy I really liked. I've liked for a long time. I just think he has got an NFL body. I think he is just everything you want as far as blocking, receiving, everything. And that is Mason Taylor out of LSU. I just think he's a guy that's just going to get better and better. I don't think he's even scratched the surface of how good he can really be eventually. I selfishly wanted him to come back to college for one more year because I thought he could have absolutely lit up college football this year like Warren and Fannin did for LSU with Garrett Nussmeier, who's a little sneaky peek. He's my number one QB, Devi, for you guys out there for next year. But I thought he would just absolutely light it up at LSU last year. So I still think it's probably a good thing he came out because he's going to get drafted high. But man, I wanted him to go back to school for one more year for those selfish reasons. I just think he can block. I think he can catch. He's a guy that I think I'm not going to see where he goes and be like, do I really want him now? I think I'm going to want him anywhere because I think he's going to get on the field and be good. And I will say with Matty, I again watched Kyle McCord, watched Syracuse. Gadsden reminds me of Fannin in that if he gets on a team that's going to use him correctly, mismatch him up with linebackers, he's going to eat in the NFL. Dude's got great hands. I love the 247 because he plays fast and has big hands. The fact that he's I saw that. I was like, oh, I thought he was going to be like I thought he was going to be like 228. Like I really did. I was like, oh, 247. I was like, yes. I think Gadsden is going to be a steal. I think he's going to be an absolute steal. Again, a guy's a little underrated. He came in as a freshman, basically a wide receiver at 213 pounds at Syracuse. He's up to 247. I love it. He had that the injury in 2023 after everybody in college football was high on him in CFF and C2C. Missed the whole year, basically. Really great comeback here last year. He's a mismatch nightmare for guys. I love Gadsden as a late guy. I could talk about these tight ends forever because, I mean, every mock draft I do, a fifth round comes up, and I'm like, that guy's still there? That's like, I want to take 7 tight ends in every draft I do because I'm like, there's so many guys. Run the 12 personnel, JT.
Run 12 personnel, baby.
I tell you what, if I'm in 4 and 5 round rookie drafts this year, I am going to be piling up tight ends. I'm telling you that right now. I'm just gonna be like, yep, I want him. I'm gonna stash him on my taxi squad to see who hits.
Yeah, that's the way to play, man. I think I have 11 tight ends in a league we're in, JT. In the tight end premium leagues, that's all I do. I just stack these.
I feel like me and you just are fighting over all the tight ends in the draft. They're like, oh, I want him. They're like, you already drafted 2. I'm like, I want another one. I don't care.
I thought this was a funny comment, JT. So we talk about this all the time. Indy is where tight ends go to die. They haven't seen a good tight end since Dallas Clark, except where the Colts, especially with A-Rich now. T-Rock, that made me laugh when I saw it.
This is hilarious. T-Rock, that's actually a really good comment because you know what I said? I brought up Dallas Clark when I was talking about Fannin to somebody else in another podcast because I was like, if he gets on a team that uses him like Dallas Clark and the way that Indy used Dallas Clark, Fannin could be awesome. And I think he could technically fantasy wise be a better tight end for fantasy than Dallas Clark, who's, I mean, a great tight end in the history of football, but fantasy wise, Fannin, if he gets in that type of offense, I think could unleash in fantasy. I really do.
Absolutely. Koopa, take us home, baby.
Real quick, Coop. Is your head about to explode with all the tight end love that's coming on with our boys right here?
Oh, I am loving this draft class. If you've got a league with points per carry for running backs and you've got tight end premium, it is amazing. But I know what Matty's referring to. I have a little entire episode of my podcast called Tight Ends Don't Matter. And the whole point is that if you've got no tight end premium, you're just starting one tight end for each team. Yeah, they don't matter because after the top like the 7, 8 tight ends, there's no difference between any of the guys. This is a class where you've got multiple guys that are potentially going to end up in that range. You've got that top tier of Tyler Warren, Colson Loveland, and Harold Fannin for me. All 3 of those guys, if you come back a year from now and you're like, hey, all 3 of those guys finished in the top 8 tight ends in their rookie years, I'm like, I'm not going to be I'm still going to be surprised, but I'm not going to be terribly surprised to hear that. And so that's the kind of thing you always have to have context around it. And so you see these guys come in, it might make your guys that are a little bit more on the fringe of tight ends being useful. Your guys like your David Njoku, your Kyle Pitts, even like a Tucker Kraft, like those guys, they might fall into the tight ends that you don't care about because of this class. That it's like, oh yeah, you just have them on your team, but they're almost at the level of roster clogger where their value in terms of what you would have to pay to get them or in terms of what they are in a trade is more than the points that they're giving your team. So that's something to keep in mind with this class is this tight end class, depending on your scoring settings. If you got huge tight end premiums, you need to start 2 tight ends for every single team. You got both of those things in your league. Oh, this class is amazing all the way down the whole depth of everything. Yep, and that is exactly right with T-Rock. It's as soon as you give me a scoring premium, for me, that number, it tends to be about somewhere between 1.5, 1.75. I'm just gobbling them all up. But going into this class, Tyler Warren is my number 1 tight end. I am just like your neighbor. I've watched all of the Penn State games. And I've been watching the majority of Penn State games all the way back to the Christian Hackenberg days. All right, so I've seen a lot of Penn State tight ends, and those the Penn State tight ends. What are they known for? They are Raz freaks. The Penn State weight room, I don't know what it is that they do there, but they do something that builds bulk on these guys. You've seen Brenton Strange, who was a 9.91 when he came out. Theo Johnson was a literal 10. It could be no better. I fully expect Tyler Warren is going to be something similar. And I was out on Theo Johnson last year because of one reason. He got outplayed by Tyler Warren at Penn State. I was like, this guy sucks. He got outplayed by Tyler Warren. I'm not getting him anywhere, and I still don't have any of them in fantasy. Actually, I may have picked up one in like an ancillary piece, but that's besides the point. I'm not trying to get Theo Johnson because he sucks because there's this Tyler Warren guy, and Tyler Warren is the one that you want. And here he is now. He took a little bit to get that production because he is in Penn State. He's behind that tight end room where they just churn out absolute athletic freaks year after year after year. But the fact that he was able to jump a year ahead and get some of that production and seal it out where he was the more productive Penn State tight end is the reason to me that he's just going to be amazing at the NFL level. Theo Johnson, he goes to New York, and he became their number 1 tight end very early on in the season. And he ended up having a decently productive season. Enough that when we were partway through the season, people were starting to go out and trade for Theo Johnson. He was getting value and getting you returns for where you drafted him from your rookie drafts. Tyler Warren is the better version. I don't think he's Brock Bowers with awesomeness. He is not that kind of tight end. What he is he is a good all-around tight end who will be a weapon in the passing game. He's not going to be somebody that I think you are designing your entire offense around, like the Raiders are doing with Brock Bowers. Like he's not going to break the tight end's receiving record, but he has a spot to be one of those top tight ends. I see him being more like a George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson in terms of production, where he fits in on the NFL field.
That's not too bad, man. That's not too bad. I got the Homer Simpson or the Grandpa Simpson like yelling at clouds kind of feeling on that one, like rah! I felt the anger
For
on
sure.
that one. It was great. It was great.
Dude, that's so funny you said that, John, because my girlfriend, like, lately, that's all she's like, are you, like, you're just, like, old man mad. I'm always like I'm yelling at the clouds about everything. Like, I was like, I'm getting old. I'm getting old and bitter. That happens, John.
That's what happens. We get old, we get bitter. That's right. People talk bad about tight ends. We get old and bitter. So that's what happens. But
yeah. And
well,
so to round it out really quick, Colson Loveland, Harold Fannin Jr., Mason Taylor. My tier break is after Fannin Jr. As Matty said, you put up 26 points per game in college, you're going to do something at the NFL level. The question is, what is that? And yeah, it's Bowling Green is where those 26 points came from. And I think what we're going to see is how much does that level of competition make a difference? Is that difference where he comes in at the NFL level and he's able to do something close to what Brock Bowers did this past year? Or is it going to be something where he gets stuffed a lot? He's got some stuff to learn. I think he's the biggest wild card of this entire draft, like for literally any position. He's somebody that he could be an absolute stud or he could be nothing. And I think that entire range is within reason for him. And that's something that we're going to have to grapple with as fantasy managers and figuring out where are you willing to take that risk on Fannin.
You guys, thank you so much for making this episode so much fun, because I laughed probably on this episode more than I've done in the last 10 combined. So I really appreciate you guys being on today. I really appreciate you guys hanging out and making it fun. Let's start on the bottom over there with Koop. See yourself out, man. Like, where can we find you at? Where can everybody see you at? People who don't follow you already, because thank you very much for being on Dynasty Evaluation today.
Yeah, follow me on X/Twitter at Dynasty Koopa. Everywhere else, I am Koop Troopa 8. And go check out the South Harmon podcast feed. Eric, Matty, and I all have podcasts on there. Eric's America's Game, Matty does 40 Chest, I do Grinding the Edge, and we come at it from totally different ways. The point is to have different voices, different processes, and find a way to amalgamate what you like about what we all do into your own process. Our point is not to tell you this is the decision to make, because we don't want it's the idea of give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. That's what we're trying to do. And so listen to everything that we do on the South Harmon podcast feed, and go check out some of the tools that we have at southharmonff.com. We got the Warp tool. I'm the one that made it. I use it literally all the time. It's so much so I go to my browser, I type in the letter W and hit enter, because my browser just knows if I've typed in the letter W that I'm trying to go to my Warp tool. And there's no other website that takes priority over that. And so that is 100%, go check that out. And if you ever have any questions, always reach out to me. My DMs are open for a reason, and the reason they're open is that way you can ask me questions and I can answer them for you.
Thank you so much. Matty, I'm in a league with you. We have some fun there. You don't accept any of my terrible trades, but that's okay. You know, every once in a while something gets done there. It is a trade, guys, and I'm not a god for trading. I'm a god for ripping people off, but that's about as far as it goes. So thanks for coming on today, Matty. Tell us everybody about you and your fantasy football knowledge.
First, John, JT, thank you guys for having us. South Harmon, like Fizz said, it's always a vibe. We're very appreciative for the opportunity to come on Dynasty Evaluation. And John, your trades always make me smile. I'll say that. The trade offers always make me smile. I always love going back and forth.
Oh, they're always good for a laugh, right? They're always
good. And you know, we're friends. You know, we've shared a beer. I can say this. Sometimes I'm laughing at them, but a lot of times I'm laughing with them. I do enjoy them genuinely. And it's always a good back and forth. There is no better trade partner than John McGlynn, I'll tell you that, because he is always ready to dance, except when you throw me those time bomb trades, and we put pressure on me for. Why you throw bombs at me, John?
I'll tell you why, because I got burned before by not putting a time delay on there, where I sent the trade and forgot about it like 3 months later, and it got accepted after somebody got, I forgot who it was. Somebody got, I think it was Deshaun Watson for somebody else, and then Deshaun Watson had that situation, and I'm like, oh shit, I forgot I had that one out there. So every trade I have is going to be a 24-hour, 48-hour exploding time offer, because I'm never getting burned again like that, boy.
I didn't even know that was a feature until you sent it. So shout out to you for educating me on the Sleeper app. But everyone listening, you can find me on X at Matty Kiwoom. Koop plugged everything that we're doing at South Harmon. We got a lot going on and a lot of big things in the works. So you're definitely going to, stay tapped in to South Harmon, everything we're doing. Also, if you just kind of like the vibe that EV, Koop, and I give off, join the Patreon, join the Discord, become part of the community. We're trying to grow every day, and we have a lot of fun doing it. Patreon.com/South Harmon.
Eric, where can everybody find your awesome stuff at? You guys, this is like my podcasts are half my podcasts have your three voices in them all the time. It's absolutely awesome to have you guys on here, and it's like being at work with podcasting all the time. You guys are my favorite people in the internet, man. So thank you very much for being here tonight. But Eric, where can they see you at?
Yeah, JT, John, thanks for having us on again. You can find me on X at Eric Vanek NFL. You can follow my show there as well at America's Game Pod. Yeah, same thing that Koop and Matty said. SouthHarmonFF.com. Follow us there on the website. Warp Tool, the lab. Our rankings are going to be on there here at some point. You're going to be able to purchase those. The Patreon.com/SouthHarmon. Man, just join our Discord. There's so many people in there. They'll help you out with trades. You want to join a new league, we have those kind of channels up in there as well. You can come join. Just a great community. Like, it's a really good community. Everybody helps each other out. I'm glad I'm a part of it. So yeah, come join us over there on the Patreon and the Discord. It's a lot of fun.
I absolutely love it. I'm going to Iowa this weekend to see Iowa Mike, maybe myself, hopefully for a beer if he's got time for me. But other than that, I love everything you guys do over there at South Harmon. It's absolutely fantastic site, fantastic people. JT, one more time for people. I talked about the fantastic Fantasy and Frames site that we're on right now.
Yeah, check out Fantasy Frames. A little bit of everything for you. IDP, Redraft, Dynasty. We do a little bit of everything on there, so check it out. All kinds of rookie draft stuff coming up. Hey, if you're sticking around, me and John got a show coming up right after this with the great Hutchinson Brown. We're talking about rookie spotlight. We're looking at some sleepers for you, talking about some guys a little bit off the beaten path. So make sure you stick around for that one here in just a couple minutes doing that. And then, hey, if you're into hockey or you know anybody in hockey, don't check out Around the Ice on Fantasy and Frames, Tuesday nights, 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central Time. We talk everything, hockey, fantasy, gambling, all the good stuff. We've been on fire over there on gambling. So if you got like $5-10 you want to throw on something random, come on, we got some heavy hitter. We got some good ones you can hit. We've been on fire lately with the toast takes. So all that stuff, make sure you check out all the guys at South Harmon. Thanks, guys, for coming on. Also, obviously, Dynasty Evaluation, like, subscribe, everything on Fantasy and Frames. I appreciate it. You can find me at JT Orange on the X, and I post all my stuff I do there. So thanks for coming, guys. I had a great time.
John McGlynn 75 on X, like JT mentioned. We're going to have Hutchinson Brown talking about our guy, Ja'Cory Brooks. So we will, that'll be our next spotlight. We'll try and do as many rookies as we can this entire offseason. Again, all this stuff's going to change, but we'll be here for the changes and everything else of all the injuries, the changes, the everything. And we're going to have fantastic people like Nick Scripps said, all these smart people, and John McGlynn on that show every day. So thank you very much, guys. Thanks for tuning into Fantasy and Frames. This place is awesome. I love being here. One of the best shows. 300 and some people in here watching our show live tonight. Thanks a lot, guys. Talk to you later.